Hello and welcome to the Practical Leadership Podcast, where leaders share their tools and practical advice to make you a better leader today. My name is Max Kozlowski. I will be your host. And today I have a very, very special guest. And I know I always say that, but extra special for many, many different reasons. She is the VP of Ancira Auto Group, and that's just a start. She has an MBA from UTSA, and I have to say she's the biggest fan of the team. In all sports, and particularly football, if I remember correctly.
That's right.
She's an Ironman, a wife, a mother, and the biggest of community leaders. April Ancira, so glad to have you here. I know you do so much for our community, and you're always helping, supporting, raising money for charity, and just kind of leading through great example. Happy to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm really pumped about this interview.
Thank you. So before we get started, what's something good or fun or happy that's been happening in your world over the last few weeks, days, months?
Oh my gosh. I think my kids are probably one of the best things because they're at I'm considering it the perfect age right now. Who knows? I told sometimes it only gets better, but they're 10 and 13 and they're independent kids. They say things that are beyond their years. So it's kind of funny, right? You have those funny, I can't believe you just said that moment. And so watching them come into their own, they're very good at sports. They enjoy school. I think I'm having a lot of fun watching them grow. Before, when they're younger, it was a lot of time, changing their diapers or being there when they're throwing a tantrum, and as adorable and sweet and cute as it is, I'm really reflecting on this time as being one of the most joyous times with my children, really, because you get to interact. I play tennis with my daughter. I swim with my son. It's just so much fun.
Well, that sounds like you, right? Always appreciating what you have and what's around you and all the good things that you see in others, and family. It's no surprise, right? Family, and in particular your kids. So out of all the roles, family's the number one most important one, correct?
Oh, for sure. I make a lot of tough decisions for family. For example, last year I was invited to the Leukemia Lymphoma Society Man Woman of the Year event. I wasn't participating in that. I was chairing their Light the Night event, which happens in October. And so they invited me as chairing their other event to that one. And it was a really big deal. And my daughter texted me from camp, can you please come to the Friday night award ceremony? It's a teeny little ceremony in New Braunfels, Texas. Basically you get awards like Smile, like, you know what I mean? And we wouldn't even pick her up till the next day. It was not an easy decision to be like last minute on Friday morning and say, you know what, I can't come to the gala tonight. I know you wanted me to maybe say something or stand up or whatever. And I was like, and it's so last minute. So we went off to camp instead to pick up my daughter. And man, she just ran full force into both our arms because she had been there for 2 weeks. And I was like, all right, yeah, no, this was the one, this was the decision to make.
Absolutely. A decision you would never regret, right?
No.
You'll never regret that.
Not at all, because LLS, Leukemia Lymphoma Society, I've done things in representation of children who've passed away. And so actually in that light, I was like, you know what, because of that, I need to be with her.
Appreciate that consistency. So this podcast has a lot to do with leadership, and there's so many different questions I have for you on that. But where did you first learn the idea or the concept of leadership? How was that observed for you, passed on to you, or how's your experience with that idea?
Hands down, it's my dad. I watched him as in the community. I think my definition of it changed. As a child, it meant own a company. I tell people what to do, and I'm on TV sometimes. And at one point, he even ran for office from the viewpoint of a small child. But then around 16, I actually asked him for a job. Mind you, this isn't like intellectual, smart April building up her resume. This is 16-year-old April that's like, I need more money for clothes. Can you please give me a job? So that it literally, that's what I did: cashier, operator, all the things you do at 16. And from there, I had the internal perspective of a leader, right? I saw how he talked to people, engaged with people. A lot of group decisions were made. On a rare occasion, he had to say, nope, this is my decision. This is my core value and belief. That happened. There are times for that. But most of the time it was group decision for buy-in purposes, right? You don't want something to go wrong and people say, well, wasn't my idea, it was your idea. Buy-in is incredibly important for everybody. So that's why he really likes to collaborate. Family was big with him. So as a leader, he couldn't just say family time is important or whatever. He knew family time was important to him. So make sure as a leader that it was important for his team to have family time, to make those baseball games, to make that beach vacation with their family and not work bell to bell at the time. So, I mean, the concept of a leader I think I watched my dad, and instead of inspiring people or demanding a direction, go in, the direction was more inspirational to follow in that direction, right?
It's no surprise to me that some of the best leaders learn leadership from examples, right? And many times it comes from their parents. And in the idea of leadership is not necessarily a concept that gets thrown around. It's just observed and learned, and you're like, well, that's what they're doing, and you didn't even know that they were a leader or leading. It was just what you do, right? You help others, you give direction, you give advice, or whatever it might be. And it seems to be your story as well, of being able to observe it and then say, okay, it's kind of how you do it.
Right. Yeah. And you also have to be ready for those tough moves, tough decisions. Leading isn't for the faint of heart. When you push somebody to excel underneath you, you want to do it while you care about them, but you don't always come off as their best friend either. So it's such a fine line in order to help somebody excel to the best that they can possibly be and still show a level of caring. I want you to be the best that you can be because I care about you. And so there's a lot of leadership, successful things that I realize require like an art form. I'm sure you've talked about this, like finesse. There's so many different personalities that you have to engage in completely different ways. And so it can be challenging.
Absolutely. So you kind of refer to it as a little bit of an art form, right? And finesse. Yeah. And it has a lot to do with being able to understand and read different people and be able to help them. And I really love what you said, that you want them to be the best because you care for them, and you want the best for them. So I'm always super interested in people that do extreme things. And to me, an Iron Man is pretty extreme. And I know that's one of your hobbies. Can I call it a hobby?
You can. At this point, I believe you can.
Because it sounds to me like a full-time job, right? To be able to prepare for one of those. And, whenever I talk to my friends or clients that have done Ironman, they always say that actually doing it the day of the event is the easy day. The difficult part is the preparation for it. And in a way, you have to be leading yourself day in and day out to be able to put in the work and the time, the energy to prepare for that. So to me, that's like, if leadership has to do with leading yourself first, what a better, most challenging way to do it than preparing for an Ironman. So tell me about that. How do you lead yourself to be able to then accomplish that feat?
So actually, the first year I decided to do an Ironman was after we had hit record sales, record net profit, and at our annual sales banquet, I was like, where do I tell these folks to go from here? Break more records, yay! And so literally within the speech, I was like, become a parent that we're absolutely capable of more than we realize. And so don't pick a number this year for yourself, which is kind of against what a lot of leaders do. They actually do have goals. But I was like, don't sell a car, put your head down, sell the next car, put your head down, sell the next car. And I don't mean that okay, negate your family and all that stuff, but don't cap it. Don't cap yourself. Man, once I hit 15, that'll be pretty awesome. Or once I hit 40, that'll be great. Our best salesman has done 600 up to 800 in 1 year, because he didn't say, I did 300, that's enough, I'm gonna stop. He just kept going. And so I was like, you know what, I feel like I don't have that equivalent for with you guys, because I'm not actually back there busting my butt with hours with a technician or selling cars or parts. I think I'm going to do an Ironman, because that seems pretty impossible from where I'm standing at this point. And I was like, and so let's go on this journey together of doing something that we thought crazy. And I led myself up to the Ironman, doing first a sprint race. Then I did a half marathon, then a marathon, and then I did an Olympic distance, then a 70 point. You never expressed, from 0 to Ironman. It was always like, well, if I can do this, I wonder if I can do that. And if I can do a full marathon, I wonder if I can do, an Ironman. And then you just, and I've kept going. I wonder if I run. I wonder if I can do a 50-mile run. I've done both. What am I sitting on now? I wonder if I can do a 100-mile run after I do Kona in October for Ironman. And each time I'm like, I'm never doing it again. But within the training, within the races, there are 5,000 things that go wrong. 5,000. And the part where you say, where's the leader for myself or whatever, is because it becomes an interesting problem to solve. How do I like problem solving? And so that's where I get my motivation. How am I going to get to race day when I'm training, or to the finish line in the race? And then it becomes like, I can't believe I just did that. If I may give you a quick example among my thousands, Ironman Cozumel, I was swimming. It's 4,200 yard swim, 2.4 miles, if you will. And it's swimming, and I'm like, this is the most beautiful swim I've ever seen. I'm almost distracted. Look at the pretty fish. People wrote things in rocks underneath for us, like Ironman in the water. Just amazing day. 800 meters in, someone tries to catch the water and yanks my goggles off. They sink straight to the bottom. No backup goggles, nothing. All the expletives came out of my mouth, right? Just 800 in. I was just like, the guy felt bad. I almost said, well, I'll take yours. He's like, did you find it? No, I didn't find it. So I was like, all right, how are we going to get out of this? Do the backstroke. Well, waves crashed over me. I started hitting people. That's not going to work. I started asking people on paddle boards that are there for safety, do you have goggles? Nobody has goggles. Okay. I was like, well, I could just quit now. And almost every race, there's a moment where I'm like, I could just quit now. Almost every race, I was like, I paid lots of money. I trained really hard. My friends flew down here. I was like, only 800 into 4,200. How on earth? And I was like, well, I'm going to swim it blind in the ocean. So I found someone to draft off of. Basically, you can feel their kick, and you actually swim 30% faster. It takes away 30% of the energy that you would have used. So makes you a lot more efficient, if I said that right. And I found the draft, and I hung on to this girl. And every now and then I would go like this, and I'd look up to make sure she wasn't swimming off course, right? Like, and my eyes just stung, and I swam mad. And she was pretty fast. So to hang on to her was like, so difficult. I was just mad. I get to the end, some lady offers me goggles right at the end. I'm like, well, I'm about to leave, so no. And all the photos are going to be with me, no goggles, because I just finished this with no goggles. And I'm like, I run into the changing tent, and it turns out to have been my fastest swim I've ever done. Like I shaved, 20 minutes off my time. Wow. I was like, okay, there's a lesson there. One, I'm capable of more, and I was lollygagging around. Two, I problem solved my way out of the situation. And then, I just kept going like, Well, three, I was distracted by all the pretty things instead of dialing in on what I was supposed to be doing. And by dialing in, which you can do in life, you can get distracted. You can play Bejeweled at work and less sales. And so that kind of, I use those moments in Ironman. I'm not kidding you, every race, flat tires, jellyfish, all the things. And I use them in my speeches. I use them at work. And then I use them as I continue. Looks like we've got a problem here. How are we going to solve this puzzle today?
Wow. I mean, that's amazing. So you thrive in challenge, it seems, and you love to solve problems. That's a wonderful combination because it's a completely different mindset, right? If everybody out there has a mindset of I love problem solving, which life is full of problems, and then you kind of address it with a zest, with an energy, and with a positive expectation,
yeah,
that changes the outcomes for you, right? And then the example of then you're able to achieve even more than you expected. And that's because you're not dwelling on it, but you're enjoying it and you're appreciating it.
Sure. Yeah, I would completely agree.
And there was a lot that you said, but one of the things you also said was focus on the process, not the outcome. So I do believe in goals, right? For those of you listening, right?
Yeah.
So you have goals, but you don't obsess over the outcome. You obsess over the process that gets you the outcomes.
Sure.
And that's exactly what you were sharing. It's like, hey, look, guys, you obsess over the process of doing your job, of focusing on the customer, of providing great value and great care, because I know that that's what you guys do. In your training, doing your best, or in the swim, trying your best, and then the outcomes kind of take care of themselves.
And that's so true. I think I do have fears sometimes of not knowing what I am capable of, and I don't want to put myself in a box because of that fear. But I don't know, I do have a fear of disappointment. I always under promise and hopefully over deliver. So I'm definitely a human being who's probably going to come in on the swim at 1:30. When I lost my goggles, I didn't worry about like I'm going to hit that 1:30 or not. I was just focused on we got to get to the finish to keep this race going. And luckily it ended up being way better. Do that with fundraising all the time too. Do to lowball to whoever I'm trying to help. And then, but then I just keep my head down and keep going, and it always ends up higher. I hope it keeps up that way.
Well, it sounds like it's a way that you found to free yourself up, right? Like we always talk about anxiety of the outcome, whether it's in sports or in business or in life. And then when you kind of let go of that outcome, and then you can just really enjoy it and do it out of a labor of love, then, I think great things happen.
I feel like I'm in therapy now. You're right. Afraid of the anxiety. That's
Let's look back to the training part of it, right? Because, okay, so done a lot of work, you've prepared a lot, worked really hard, you've made commitments to people, they're there to support you. You can't disappoint, so you force yourself to perform. But how about like all those days when you have a very busy day and you didn't sleep very well at night, and the next morning you've got to go run and swim and then go to the office and then at night go to a charity event? How do you keep yourself focused and delivering day in and day out?
I complain about it to my husband.
I'm sure he would agree.
And he's like, this is self-inflicted. Those days are challenging. I've had enough experience them where I almost go off the rails. I have to be honest with you about this. I was having one of those days. I had a board meeting at Trinity in the morning. I left the lunch part of that board meeting to go to lunch with some folks from the Express News to run an ad for a nonprofit I was having, back to the board meeting, changed to Trinity, went to a nonprofit event that night, got my run in way early that morning. By the way, that's when I worked out that day. And after the nonprofit, all I was thinking about is, wow, the second part of the board meeting at Trinity, got to be back, drop off the kids, be back there at 8 a.m. And that's the kind of day I was having. And unfortunately, because I was so focused on what's next, I did get pulled over after the nonprofit event and was taken in for a DUI. Now, it was right after a charity event for Clarity, which is for mental health, go figure. At 10:30 at night, nothing like shots at a bar, right, or anything. And I thought I had with food, water, one an hour should be fine according to all things I've learned, right? So that happened, blows up in my face, all over the news. This is where my mind was. I was in the back of the cop car, and the first thing I did was text. This is the first thing I did, text the chairman of the board at Trinity University that I wasn't going to make the meeting tomorrow. Wow. That was the first thing I did. Wow. So that experience that I've come and gone through, and there's so many more stories there. While I was there, I made lots of other opportunities that worked out. But through that, I learned, don't put yourself in that position again. That's me going off the rails. No, not drinking myself silly. No, me not paying attention because I'm already focused on where do I need to be next? Slowing down. And so that's what I keep in my mind now. I literally, if it gets too much, I will see if I can cancel something. I will say, listen, I'm so sorry. I just need to move this to the next level. And anytime I if I have to bring up 2019, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I totally understand. Then nobody's feelings are hurt. Kind of to my benefit, but no, I do. I'll cancel stuff. I'll dial it back if I have to.
And thank you for sharing that. And people forget the million things that you've done right and good and well, and focus on the one time that something went wrong. And then people like, you're 3-4 years later, you're still mentioning it. And it's like one out of how many opportunities have you had and done great things, and you're still thinking about that one. But it was a great lesson. Yes. It's typical of overachievers, honestly. It's typical of overachievers to forget to put their oxygen mask first, and then they end up screwing up somehow, right? Somewhere. And the better ones realize it really quickly and kind of come out of it really fast. And sometimes it takes a while and takes several screw ups. So it sounds like, you realize really quickly the importance of kind of learning to say no. And just like you lead yourself with tons of discipline, also having the discipline of not overcommitting yourself. Right. And just a fun note, right? It took us like 4 months to get this interview scheduled. So prioritizing, well done.
No, it's true though.
But that's perfect, right? I mean, that's the big idea. You can't just say yes to everything.
And I absolutely was. And I was so proud of myself every time somebody was like, how do you do it all? And I was like, yeah, it's really good. But no, that's not the case. You shouldn't be doing it all. You should not.
And again, I love the fact that you recognize, because we're talking about your achievements, we're talking about your energy, about your commitment, about your discipline, and you're saying, hey, also make sure to watch out, because you can also overdo it.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to touch on this just one more time, because again, I am so intrigued. How sort of conversation do you have on your mind when you have to do these difficult things? Again, wake up really early because you have a very big day and you still have to put in the time to prepare, or you've had a long day and you still have to go to that, to that event, or MC it, or participate in it, because it would be so easy to just say, sorry, I can't have the time, don't have the energy. Yes, some people would be disappointed, but they would understand. But how sort of internal conversation or dialogue do you have? Or it's just so natural to you that you don't even think about it anymore? It's just who you are and what you do?
I think I never put down my phone. Still a bit of me that's already on the next thing. So if I'm taking an Uber to an event, I'm like, all right, what do I need to address right now? And I'll address it the whole way to the event. And so, I don't, when I'm that tired, I don't think I notice until the very end of the day. And then when I go to sleep, I actually can't go to sleep right away. I pop up maybe 3 or 4 times to write a few notes down, things I forgot to do or need to address, or an idea that came to me. So I try to be very good about, when I'm in my meetings, not holding my phone and trying to have my meeting and also emailing. I know there's some managers out there who do that. I don't think that feels very good to the folks that want to be heard or feel like you are listening. So I definitely don't try to do that, but I will take other opportunities. There's hands-free phones. I sold a car on my way over here while, hands-free. I'll Mazda at our Kia store. I take the dogs out. I'll answer an email. I think I'm so busy. I don't think about it until the end of the day. Even on, like, say if I have a 2 or 3 Zoom meetings, I literally do my bike ride indoors. I'll switch it indoors and do 5 hours indoors while I'm Zooming on these meetings.
Time very, very wisely is what I would call it. And then recognizing what sort of activities you can put together that won't affect the performance. And I also appreciate that you said, but when it comes to like people, I give them my full attention and I don't want to have anybody feel like I'm not there.
I think as a community, just as a human population, we're not very good at actually listening. We're always thinking about what we're about to say next before we've even finished hearing the previous sentence. So we're like, but I have this to say, so I can't wait for him to stop talking so I can say this. And then you really don't hear. I'm not very good at listen. I have auditory processing issues. I have to literally focus to make sure I hear what you're saying. I do repeat back often what people say to make sure I'm understanding it correctly. Next venture I'm going on to with Ancira is doing serious communication training, because I've decided that at least 70 to 80% of our problems can be solved with effective communication, customers, internally, whatever. I mean, obviously, airbag recalls with parts on massive delay, I can't get that part here via communication, but I can certainly communicate where we are with it to the customer effectively, and help them in that manner. And so it's literally, that is the topic du jour for me right now, solving things with effective communication.
Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about that. So you're talking about kind of what to bring to the business in terms of training that's going to help them. Are there any things that you're always thinking about in terms of the business that you want to get better at, and how do you solve it? How do you, like, for example, we've got communication issues. I want them to improve. So what are you going to do? What are your steps towards improving that? How do you operate?
So I think I'll give you a really popular and specific one. It's usually a customer says that they had to call to find out about the status of their vehicle. So if we're short on technicians, or if the part's on back order, to the service advisor, they think, well, I don't have anything to report, so why would I call the customer? The customer is like, they don't care about me. Haven't even gotten to my car. What kind of operation is this? I'd like to think it doesn't happen a lot, but it certainly stands out to me. And so my steps, or what we are currently putting together, we just had a meeting last night, is we have someone from the outside, several topics from the inside. I will actually be going into the stores. I don't know if it's monthly or quarterly, because I want this to be cultural. I don't want to be like, please learn this and then remember it forever. I want to make sure that in these specific areas like this one, everybody, so here we are in the system, please put a note to follow up with, and if the computer allows, or whatever systems allow, a callback. The callback is mandatory, regardless if the repair has been completed in the middle of the repair. I don't care where you are in this repair. You're letting the customer know we have not forgot about them. This is where they are in the plan. And that would be for that specific one. A lot of times I think transparency is an issue. The more we can just be honest about everything. I tell customers what I own the car for. When I sell it to them, I was like, listen, I own it for this much money. This is how much I'm going to charge you over. Do you think that's fair? And they're like, great.
April, so you're sharing there's communication challenges and you are going to attack it. And you've said a couple of really interesting things. So one of them is we're going to get help from the outside and we're going to do some work internally. And I think I understand, but I'd love for you to go into more detail, because you said something that's key. I want this to be cultural, right? Mm-hmm. Ingrained and rooted in the organization and not just the flavor of the month. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think that a lot of our listeners are going to realize that they've tried to do a bunch of things and then they didn't work. And it's because they didn't do it the way that you're going to describe that you're going to do it.
Right. So I can give you actually a perfect example of how this worked, but we didn't continue it. So this was really successful after I went to the National Automotive Academy, and it's a year-long class. And the last class is basically on leadership, and there was a consultant there. So we brought the consultant, and he talked to the general managers and VPs, and he taught us all the great management and leadership lessons. And we were like, this is great stuff. I love it. All the light bulbs were going off, right? But what we did with that after he came down a number of times was what changed it. He taught us how to teach it. And that was pivotal. I still remember everything I taught and could regurgitate it to you to this day. Now, this happened in the early 2000s. We're talking 2005 to maybe around 2008 or 9. The group that was involved in Ancira at that time still remembers these lessons, especially if you were someone who taught it, right? So we taught it to the next group and then to the next group. Now, eventually at the end, you have some turnover at the bottom, but you hope culturally that enough of the management had taught it and stuck with it that they were able to get to the next group coming in. Now, unfortunately, we haven't had that since then, and this population has aged quite a bit, right? And we've even had some of the folks, the good news is we promote from within, but those people we were promoting were on level 1. They never taught the information, but they were taught it. However, it doesn't stick. So the problem was, while it worked phenomenally, was that we called it Beyond the Title. That was the name of the actual classes that we were having. And it was so much fun. We'd sit there all together, management, and watch while we practiced in front of each other before we taught it to the next group of managers. And it was incredibly effective. So we're going to go about communication this go round with someone from the outside, but then have us teach it and then have that level teach the next level. And when you do that, and then when you revisit it consistently, it sticks, but you have to revisit it.
Absolutely. So there's a few keys there. So I'm just going to repeat them for everyone, right? So it's not just about having someone come in from the outside and teaching it to everyone. It's about having that person teach it to the managers in a way that they learn how to teach it.
True. Yes, I agree.
Right. So now they're learning from their peers, managers or supervisors, and it also has more longevity because you had to connect with it more, have more engagement with the training, so you believe in it more, and you had to learn how to teach it, so you really learned this stuff. Then you put it to practice, and then it actually works.
Right.
Then the key part, what you said, is the importance of repetition. Because sometimes we think that because we've said it once, then everybody should know it, and then they should just behave that way. We don't behave that way, even though people have told us to do things, right? So it requires tons and tons and tons of repetition. And one thing that you mentioned, and I explained it just a little bit different, which is the idea that anytime there's a new team member or a team member leaves, it becomes a completely different team. And over time, culture dilutes.
Yep.
So you've got to continue to be pouring in, concentrate into the mix. Otherwise, it starts to dilute, and then you don't have the impact that it has. And I think that you're saying, hey, now we recognize that when you've got something good, you've got to stick to it, and don't just expect it to stick forever. And calling it cultural is key, because now it's like we're all going to be involved and engaged. You mentioned, hey, I'm going to be visiting, I'm going to be repeating this, I'm going to let them know that it's not the flavor of the month, it's the flavor of forever when it comes to the way that we want to do things. And that is definitely a key to success. And I'm sure you guys have done that in a bunch of different areas in the business to have the success that you've had over the years.
Yeah, I've done some of those things in the area of the business. I think celebrating anniversaries, 5, 10, 15 years. Actually, we did that today. where we have a luncheon and we celebrate those anniversaries and the longevity, and we have speeches and awards and checks. And we do that on a consistent basis. Now, that's not necessarily a lesson, but what it does do is show what we find important in the organization. Do you feel like family? Do you feel like you belong here? Longevity. We're here to do this together. And so I think that helps. There's no ivory tower and then everybody else, because all management is in there and we're all eating together for these anniversary luncheons that we have quarterly. So there are tidbits of things that we do that are successful and do feel cultural. Nothing massive in a while or as pivotal as what we're hoping to do with.
So it's a major initiative for you guys. It's not taken lightly.
Right, absolutely. The other thing we do find important is behind communication, or communication may aid in, do necessarily all the frills and thrills, that little gifts here, little whatever, but instead make all of the process the easiest it could possibly be, the most efficient it could possibly be. If it's Starbucks coffee or HEB brand coffee, right? Let's not focus on that, because what's valuable is the customer's time. There's nothing more valuable to people today than time, especially if you look at younger millennials, Generation Z. What do they value more than a giant paycheck? Time off. How much time off? When's my vacation? That's the first thing they all ask, the first. And so when you look at that being a value to people, I think the easier and quicker we can make a transaction and more transparent, that better things will be. So I would say that's my second initiative, but I'm hoping that communication will help a lot with that.
Love that you're bringing understanding your customer and how it's changing, how your customer is changing over time and adapting to what they need, right? Mm-hmm. Like it used to be one of those deals, you buy a car and you could expect to spend the whole day there. Mm-hmm. It was actually somewhat I would think of an enjoyable process for some people. And now just the idea of going to a dealership is like, no, why? Right? Yeah. Everything comes to me and to my door.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. You're going to find this kind of interesting. I tried to get before COVID, I had billboards that said, ding dong, your truck is at your door. I was like, we need to be Amazon today. We just got to drop it off. And the needle didn't move. Here comes COVID. I was like, we're ready. I was so excited. I was already ahead of the game. Literally, maybe 2 people a month wanted their car delivered. Everybody else wanted to come in. Everybody. It was unbelievable. I would have never, if I had to guess before what's going to happen, what do you think customers are going to do? I was like, oh, we'll be dropping off 90% of them at the door. Nope. Everybody came in. It was
wow.
It was shocking.
Well, but it sounds like, you were innovative and you were also learning fast and realized what was important to them. Because I, for whatever it's worth, I believe that buying a car is like, right, it's a big thing. It's probably the second most valuable thing you ever own.
Yep.
So I think you guys understand that and make it fun for people to go and visit you.
Right. Yeah, they do. I think that people do like, how does the leather feel? How does it smell? And don't want to get the car delivered, decide you don't like it, have someone pick it up in 3 days, try to figure it out again. They just want to be there and see it and feel it. And in spite of the fact that people are like, dealership, no. They
also think it might have to do with our market, right? I mean, everything is relatively close by. If you're in another city where you might have to drive 45 minutes to the dealership in traffic and all this, you might have second thoughts, but it's like minutes anywhere. So,
and California operated totally different. Everybody was getting theirs delivered.
I think I understand. April, so let's talk a little bit about some tools that you use in leadership or business. People come to you and ask for advice, and kind of like, what would you tell someone that is growing a business, wants to be a better leader? What something that you do or work with? What would you start in giving them some advice to be better?
I think if you're new at it, I think asking for help. I had my dad, so I wasn't asking everybody, which I think I should have, because as I got older, I realized the value in that. And I did not reinvent the wheel in my older life because I was like, oh, wow, this is working amazing over here. Why haven't I been doing that? When I was younger, I was like, I've got this. I've got this. And I think maybe that was a mistake. But my dad, so when he started in 1972, the first thing that happened was all the dealers asked if they could help him. Glad you're here. How can we help you? What can we do? And literally, people recognize the names of Cavender and Gunn and Clarence Kalig as other dealers in San Antonio. They were all giving my dad some tricks. Hey, this is how you need to do this. This is how you need that. Immediately, he joined what they call a 20 group. That is like 20 dealers from across the United States competing, so they're not in the same market. You get together and you share best ideas. And so if there's an association that provides that, a chamber or something, you can always look to network. Networking is great, but I think taking them first for their advice, is the best way to go as a new leader. And go anywhere. If you go somewhere that's already existing and you're a leader, wouldn't immediately change everything. You want to get lay of the land. You want to get buy-in. You want to be part of the team. If you're a new leader, you just go back to talk to anyone and everyone. There's no limit to what you can learn.
Excellent. Because that's kind of what I preach, right? Good mentor.
Yeah.
Talk to people that have been there before and done it before, and from them, and don't reinvent the wheel. I love it. And peer help and peer support. I mean, what great thing. It's kind of shocking to think that, like your competitors in a way would embrace you and help you and support you. And it's just like a sign of a lot of an abundant mindset. And you can't get it locally, then get it from sales, but you need peers, people that are struggling with the same things that you are, ideally know and understand the industry as well, and can come in and help and support you, and shave years and years off of your business growth.
Yeah.
So how about someone that's like, hey, our business has been around for a while, it's doing well, but it doesn't have the scale that we wanted, right? Like, we want to grow big and it's not big yet. What are some thoughts on that?
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, I guess it's sort of, the best examples I could give are from the dealership world. Something my dad did learn is that some people are against is, I think, stashing cash, that's invested frugally. But stashing cash for a while is incredibly important before you go. We found out that there was an 80s stock market crash, and my dad was making payroll out of his own pocket. And he came down to 1 month of no longer being open. We were one store then, we're 12 now. And so before you grow, I would say stash cash, because we stash cash now, because you don't know when a housing bubble bust, a .com bust, what's the next cyclical thing that will affect your business. And if you grow too fast and you're out of cash, you're closing your doors pretty fast. Also, if you grow too fast, expenses can outweigh profit for too long. If you can't scale as quickly, job market's tough, hiring people. So I say first stash your cash, and then you go from 1 to 2. And you don't need to hire anyone in the dealership world. And I would assume this is the same for the restaurant world or anything that multiplies. There's that fine line of, when do I hire that one extra person that I need now? And that person's usually pretty expensive, but it could make or break you. And I think that's kind of an art as well, is like, all right, I handle 3 dealerships, but if I go to 4, I'm going to have to make less for a little bit with this extra person in order to get to 5, 6, 7. And then by 7, I'll be making more than I did when I had 3. And so you have to realize that in growth, definitely not a straight line. You have to, and not because of economy or anything. It's when you grow, you have to do some additional hiring, some additional expenses, some expanding and buildings. Who knows what it is, or regulation requirements that'll make you go back a little bit. You'll be taking a pay cut or get smaller. But in order to continue, you're up. And so you have to kind of, as an entrepreneur, you have to have guts, right? It takes a lot of guts to know a hit's coming intentionally in order to be bigger.
So you have lots of cash, or you know what's for you, but understand it.
Yeah.
Then you got to manage it, because we all know that growing takes cash. So you've got to be able to manage it. And I think you said it really nicely. It's kind of like, know your breaking point. Like, at what point does present an investment and not a cost?
Right. Yeah.
When you have to hire the next person, buy the next building, and you're not going to get a return on that right away until you've built the scale.
Right.
But recognizing those kind of like inflection points, and the better you can recognize them, the better you can prepare, and then you can make a decision. Hey, can I take this risk?
Right.
And then, as you said, if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to say, yes, I can take the risk and
Yes.
take it. But at least you will know, and you're going to say, hey, look, I'm going to be not making money for the next 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year, but I know that if I don't take this step, then I don't get to the next level.
Right.
And
Yeah.
power of being able to and those points really exist.
Yeah, they did. And then eventually you get scaled so big that you can make those decisions to scale bigger, easier, faster.
Yeah, absolutely. You speed things up and you build a lot of momentum. And
yeah.
So, when I think about you, I think about a people person, right? That, people like you. When it comes to managing, leading people, what style? What would you say that you do well that others should learn from you?
Oh my God. Okay. Well, I'm not totally a people person. I'm actually to think of the new word that they call it, like an introvert who does well in social settings.
Okay.
So I could avoid galas at all costs. I would, but I literally count to like before I go in, and I literally in my head say showtime. I'm giving a speech. I don't have to. I'm actually engaging with somebody independently, so the vulnerability isn't there as much. I'm also afraid of not remembering somebody's name, where the 2 or 3 kids, what their favorite hobby is. I get in trouble for that a lot. The people get really upset if I can't remember who they are. And so I become like, oh, I'm just gonna stay back here and be like, like some comics or actors or whatever. They get up there, they come out, and they look larger than life, and only to find out that they really love Netflix in a small corner in a dark room.
Who doesn't? Who doesn't?
Who does it, right? So I guess when it comes to my job, I have a job switch in my head. And I honest to God do care about those people. And I get really nervous when I see them, because I'm like, I don't remember their name. How am I going to pull this off? I'm in that way. I don't know how to fix that part of me. I've read all the memorization books. I can only get to 3.14 in pi. Can't get any further. And basically I try to lead via stories, via examples. Something recently may have happened to a manager they can relate to somebody in our organization that did something. Try to keep all the leadership in-house. I don't just deliver a message like, hey, get mad at somebody for something you think that they did wrong. Let's think, why did they do it wrong? Did they actually do something wrong? Do you not understand the situation correctly? I don't just say that. I say, pretend you're on a highway and all of a sudden it's bumper to bumper. There's an accident. God, it's 5 o'clock on a Friday. You just want to get home and some car comes buzzing by you in the side lane, and they're just flying, and all you can think of is all the expletives in your head. I can't believe that. Well, I'm sitting here obeying the rules, and that guy thinks he can fly down, and you're mad. And the example that I used, and this at the time was our CFO and our EVP, and I go, listen, Greg and Betty are their name. I go, well, imagine in that car flying by you is Greg. He's flying from the office as fast as he can with Betty in the car. And they're in the side lane. And why are they in the side lane? Because Betty is in the middle of having a heart attack and he needs to get to the hospital. And that was a true story. Popped in my head as we were having discussions on okay, before you fly off the handle, do you know the situation? Can you evaluate all the sides of it and what's going on? And all of a sudden, while I had everybody there angry in their car, whatever, they imagined poor Betty in there with Greg, whom they know very well, written this real life experience. And they stopped, they paused, they weren't angry anymore. And so I try to deliver leadership messages, is trying to make them as relatable possible. And the good news is I've done most of the jobs, at least for small bits. So I'm their interactions with the customers. I know how they go and all the wonky things that you can never see or happen to you.
Wow. So the storytelling, the leading by example, there's not here. This is the time of the podcast where I tried to do a little bit of a summary of everything that I've heard today, and there's a lot. And then you'll have a chance to add anything that I might have forgotten or share anything else that you haven't shared yet that you would have liked to share. I know there's more up there. So let's see. First, as values sounds, so consistent, and being consistent with that value and having to make those difficult decisions. And then lead by example showed up so many times here, right? Where when you weren't relating to them in a way that you said, hey, I'm not in there selling the cars, but I am going to challenge myself just like I'm asking you to challenge yourself. And that to be a lead by example person. You mentioned getting the buy-in. We didn't go too far into that subject, but the importance of getting buy-in from your team and your group, and kind of how to learn that from your father, and a way to, people engaged around what you're trying to accomplish. I think super powerful was the best. You want people to be the best because you care about them. So you're pushing and you're driving them because you care about their success and their well-being. And you know that more, and they're capable of more than they realize. We are capable of more than we realize. So it's important to push ourselves and to see what we can accomplish. We talked a little bit about the focusing on the process and not just the outcomes. So, you put your head down, you do the work, and then the outcomes will show up. And you were telling us, the story of losing the goggles, and, you have to adapt and problem solve. And ultimately, because you were focused on the process, you ended up doing the fastest time you've ever done. So you accomplished even more than you could have accomplished. And the mindset of solving problems. Right? So life has tons of problems. Business has lots of problems. Hobbies have lots of problems. And you said, hey, if you look at problems as something you love to solve, then you always have the energy to go about it, and you feel good and you feel energized by solving them. So problems are not a bad thing. They are a great thing, and they're a fun thing, and you get through. That is amazing. So you time wisely. You gave us a lot of examples of how you're kind of multitasking, but the way that makes sense and it doesn't interfere. So you mentioned when you're with people and you're listening, you really are listening to what they have to say. You're not thinking about what you're going to answer once they're done. You really are paying attention to them. And you don't have your phone around, but you have your phone around when you're doing other things, right? Or when you have time that's being wasted. So being smart about how to use your time, multitask in the right place, but not multitasking with people. You talked about how it's a big priority for your organization to get really, really communication. And that one of your like tricks, which is kind of like to do it, but I think it's great advice, is the repeat what you just heard, right? What you just heard to really consolidate, did we really communicate correctly? Did I really hear what you said? Are we both in the same page? Super powerful. We talked about the best way to have anything introduced into your organization is to have the managers teach it themselves. So not just have someone from the outside to teach everyone, have them teach management, so then management can consistently repeat the message and make sure it becomes cultural and it penetrates all areas of the business, not a one and done flavor of the month thing. And then repetition key. And over time, teams change, and people come out, so you require that repetition to continue to make things possible. We didn't go into this subject, but it's a powerful one too. Make things easy and keep it simple. Like what is important and valuable for your clients, and give them that. And you're telling us a little bit about how you're understanding the changes in your customer, and you understand the importance of their time and how you're trying to keep it simple and save them time. So your process is simple, and keep it simple for your customers as well. I've got more. So if you're an entrepreneur, ask for help, get advice, have a good mentor, don't reinvent the wheel, and get peer help and support. Whatever industry you're in, get with other people that are in the same industry so you could share best practices and best ideas and feed each other. Then here's a businesswoman side, stash the cash, right? You need to understand that growth will take cash, so make sure that you have plenty of it. There's going to be challenges along the way, and you want to make sure you can get through them, and understand that growth takes cash, and know your inflection points, right? Know when you have to make an investment to keep growing versus just continuing like linearly, and say, hey, at this moment, I'm going to have to put in a lot of money. I'm not going to be profitable. It's going to take a while, but I know it, and I am okay with it. And then I have the guts to make that decision versus always expecting a return from every dollar that you put in. And then you were really telling us about the stories, and you actually gave us several stories. So you really illustrated that of teach by telling stories and sharing examples. A lot of them from real life, I think, kind of go out there and share, because people will connect with that and they'll understand it. And I'm sure you'll read. So I know I must have missed a few things, but kind of some of the important things that I kind of took some notes. Did I miss something? What have I not asked you that you wish I would have asked you?
You're fine. You've hit everything. You've hit everything. I guess if I were to add teeny bit, which I mean, you have addressed this multiple times, but I teach or speak to kids about in high school or middle school is about don't be a failure. It's a part of growth. I fail all the time. And actually usually make fun of myself for it. I learn something every time. I come out stronger every time for it. I have, I'm not going to do it today, but plenty of examples of why a failure was necessary to grow, why it had to happen for improvement, and then multiple other things that would have never happened that were positive had the failure not occurred. And so you've addressed that on somewhere. Every good leader knows that failure is a part of the business. My dad always said that if you didn't fail at something today or do something wrong, then you're fired, because it probably meant you did nothing all day long. Because it's almost a little bit unavoidable to agree. And the only one other thing, since you said we didn't talk about it, I just saw this book, which is great. It happens to be sitting right here. Was the Simplify Everything, right? To make it easy, fast. This was the book, Effortless Experience. And it's all about it gives you examples of the warm, fuzzy stuff that you can do, but then what really matters to customers. So this is what got me launched off on easy, is this book in particular.
And that is excellent. So I think we're going to have to do a part 2 so we can get into those subjects a little bit deeper. You can never talk enough about the importance of failure and trying and stretching and going after things that ultimately don't turn out, but give you great lessons and become a great platform for something else. And when you say it means a whole lot to a lot of people, because some people and you see is things and success and the company and growth and stuff like that, but they don't necessarily know what you had to go through to that. So really appreciate that. And a great recommendation, and the effortless experience, and the importance of being mindful about building an experience and doing things for your customers that enhance the overall experience for them. And obviously you're saying it right, like you've got a bunch of business books there. You've got to read, you've got to learn, and you got to continue growing. And that's another great example of that.
Yep, that's about it.
April, before I let you go today, so what is something you're looking forward to that's going to be happening here in the next few, again, days, weeks, or months?
Oh, exciting stuff. We do most of this yearly, but my favorite thing to do is being involved in the community, like you mentioned earlier. Like be the religious connotation, but like Christmas, you somebody a gift and you can't wait for them to open it because you're so excited. Get them something that they wanted or that they needed, right? And all of it feels like that, and it's a little addictive. So we have several vehicle giveaways. We've got one coming up in the middle of August. We're giving away a vehicle that we've raffled with the Texas Yes Project. So calling a winner and telling them they've won a vehicle is so exciting. And then we get to give away 80,000 supply kits to Title I elementary schools for that raffle. That's how much is raised. It's crazy. Texas Yes Project. Then right after that, we're going to raffle away another vehicle. I don't know how we're pulling this off this year. For Kids a radio show that Kid Craddock started a long time ago. And this one will send terminally ill or critically ill children and their entire families to Disney World free with medical care, doctors, nurses, first in line, a chartered flight, the whole thing. And so it's like help this organization, and then you're giving someone a free car. And then this is also one of my favorites coming up. I guess, I don't know why we're doing them all back to back. This one is called Wish for Our Heroes. And it's usually, this one is for active military, but on occasion is for also some veterans or wounded warriors. And it's great. People submit their wishes and this organization grants them for our military. And that one isn't a raffle or anything. We just show up with a car and surprise military hero or veteran with a vehicle. And those are always all my favorite, because you have people in a serious emotional state. They're feeling everything, right? And so have to be some of the best moments is when you do stuff like that.
April, I think you kind of a lot about yourself and about your leadership and about your style. Giving, right? Giving it your all, giving to help others, giving to support others. I thank you enough, and this community is so much better off for you being here. We all owe you a lot. If somebody wants to connect with you, help you, support you, or buy a car from you, where can they find you?
Yes, outside of Ancira.com, which just has the general car information. I'm on all the old people social media, Facebook, that's what the kids call it, old people, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I answer all my own direct messages myself. Nobody answers them for me. So if you direct message me on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, it's April Ancira on Instagram and Twitter, or it's called X now. And on Facebook, it's April Ancira Thompson, but you can connect super easy with me there.
Well, you have it, guys. Now you know where to connect with April and hopefully help support some of those causes, whether you're buying a car or just giving some time and effort. There's a lot of ways that you can support. April, thank you so much for being in the podcast today. We really hope we can do it again sometime. It was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.